Hello, Rush fans. This is Ryan here. Welcome to episode number 35 of Rush Roundtable. On this episode, we start our four-part series discussing the Fly By Night album, and we start with Anthem and Best I Can. Fly By Night was released in 1975 and was the first album featuring Rush as we've come to know and love, Geddy, Alex, and the new guy, Neil. Join the discussion in the comments, and we hope that you enjoy this episode.
All right, so we've got three guests on with us today. We've got Carson and Tristan, two familiar faces, and we have a new guest, Brian. So Brian's going to take a minute here to introduce himself. Take it away.
Hey, so my name is Brian. So I've been a Rush fan since 2002. I was kind of late in the game. I was still in high school when I was introduced to them. My first concert was the Vapor Trails tour in 2002 as well. So total, I've seen Rush only 4 times between the Vapor Trails tour and R40 tour. Then I saw them once on the R30 tour, and then once on the Clockwork Angels tour. So a total of 4 times. So Geddy Lee is a huge inspiration to me. He's the reason I started playing bass. And I was able, I'm able to share that with my kids now, and my 2 daughters who are now 16 and 13, they really love Rush as well. So my favorite album by far, I know it's an unpopular opinion, is Power Windows.
It's my favorite album too.
Very good. And
so
my favorite song.
It's actually a popular opinion between admins because 3 of our admins, including myself, that's our favorite album. So.
Fantastic. So my favorite song from there, it's how can you pick one favorite song of Rush? Would it have to be Territories? So that's me as a Rush fan in a nutshell, and I've been hooked since 2002.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you on, and we hope to have you on again. This episode starts Fly By Night discussion. So I'm going to read from this song-by-song book, basically a passage about Fly By Night as a whole, and then Jim's going to read a passage from this book about each song, Anthem and Best I Can, that we'll be discussing tonight. So here we go. So after Rutsey split from the band following the release of the debut album, the band urgently needed to recruit a replacement. A live tour had been scheduled, and they were now signed to Mercury Records, a major label. There was a wave of enthusiasm and excitement about the band, which, if not harnessed quickly, would be wasted. So Lee and Lifeson immediately set about finding a drummer who could perform and write the kind of heavy technical music that they were enthused by. The story goes that after a long day auditioning drummer after drummer, Neil arrived in his mother's Ford Pinto with his drums stored in rubbish cans. Lee, reminiscing on their first meeting, said his first impression was that he was kind of goofy, while Lifeson remembered his first thoughts being, God, he's not nearly cool enough to be in this band. When Neil started playing, however, Geddy and Alex were utterly convinced they had found the right person. Alex's initial concern gave way to awe. He pounded the crap out of those drums. He played like Keith Moon and John Bonham at the same time. Only a fortnight later, the new lineup began their first full North American tour. In February 1975, just 11 months after the release of the debut album, Rush released Fly By Night. This album marks an incredible progression in a very short space of time, which was surely catalyzed by Peart's recruitment. While Neil's drumming was superlative, Lee and Lifeson remarked while on tour that he was almost always passing his time by reading, suggesting to him that if he was keen on reading, that he may also be interested in writing. Neil revealed he had already written several lyrics to use. Peart's intellectual and literary style was often regarded as verbose and pretentious, but as time has gone by, his lyrics have been appreciated as insightful and interesting works. The production on Fly By Night is a step up from Rush as well. With Terry Brown at the helm to guide the young band through the studio environment, this album is marked as an improvement with incredible clarity and excellent instrumental separation. The album, with its crisp and bright sound, also manages to successfully capture the energy of the band's performances. Owning their musical skills through relentless touring and writing new material during downtime in hotel rooms and sound checks, it is not just the addition of Peart that makes this album a more impressive one. Lifeson is more confident and creative than ever, while Lee's bass playing is more adventurous and technically in a class of its own. With the drummer who would later be widely regarded as the world's greatest, Rush's lineup was now complete. In some ways, the fact that Fly By Night is more exploratory and progressive may explain why it did not produce the same critical excitement of the band's debut album. It also, to the disappointment of Mercury Records, failed to produce a successful single. All right, so Jim, why don't you go ahead and read real quick about Anthem, and then we'll discuss as a group.
All right, so from the same book, Anthem. The crash of cymbals and growl of guitars open the album with an explosive and hyperactive riff. The guitar and bass double up in unison and tightly perform a rapid descending run, while Peart practically performs a drum solo over them. This is clearly a band that have made impressive technical progress. After being presented immediately with Peart's complex and busy drumming, the listener is suddenly presented with another huge change to the band, the lyrics. Whereas the songs on the previous album were largely typical hard rock fare, Anthem is a song inspired by Ayn Rand's controversial philosophy, objectivism. Rand had written broadly on what she called the virtue of selfishness, and this song, about the importance of autonomy and self-determination, paraphrases Rand's points in a concise and effective way. Live for yourself, there's no one else more worth living for. Begging hands and bleeding hearts will only cry out for more. Halfway through the song, one of Lee's incredibly high-pitched wails carries us into a guitar solo. Lifeson's guitar is fantastically lyrical here, showing an ebb and flow in the composition of the solo and a player who has developed his own unique style, mixing the frenzied and frantic with the restrained and melodic. Beneath the guitar solo is a type of flowing and serpentine bass playing listeners have come to expect from Lee. And yet, the drums, which had previously provided a mere foundation for this, are now matching Lee beat for beat, fill for fill, and pulling the bass along into previously uncharted places. This is not just a guitar solo, but a thrilling instrumental section. Seamlessly leading from the solo into another verse, the song makes its final lyrical point. Well, I know they've always told you selfishness was wrong, yet it was for me, not you, I came to write the song.
So I have, what's that?
I said, and that's it.
That's it. I do have a couple quotes that I wanted to read, one from Alex and one from Getty that I thought were definitely necessary to read here. So this one's from Alex in a 1996 Guitar World interview. We were trying to be quite individual with Fly By Night, which was the first record that Neil, Getty, and I did together. Anthem was the signature for that album. Coincidentally, the name of our record company, which is Anthem Records in Canada, came from this song. And Neil was in an Ayn Rand period, so he wrote the song about being very individual. We thought we were doing something that was different from everybody else. Alex was using the Gibson ES335 then, and had a Fender Twin and a Marshall 50 watt with a single 4x12 cabinet, and Echoplex was my only effect. And that was Alex in 1996 Guitar World interview. And then Getty in a 2013 Rolling Stone interview said Alex and I had written this riff, and we had written it back in the day when Rutsy was in the band, and Rutsy wasn't into playing it. It was too complicated, and it wasn't his thing. He was more into straight ahead rock and roll. We jammed with Neil the first day we met him on the opening riff. When he started playing, we looked at each other and were like, yeah, this is the guy. He can play. He'll do. So, what do you guys think of the music? What do you guys think of the influence that the new guy brought?
Well, I mean, I think that one of the good songs to talk about. Talk about what a huge leap from, and it speaks mostly to the chemistry of those three guys, because while they're all fantastic on their own, could they have done this without each other? I don't think so. Like I especially liked how much the book touches on Alex, because I think Alex's playing on this song is actually the best out of all three of them, which is saying a lot, because you have obviously two guys who are probably the best to ever pick up their instruments. And I think Alex goes toe to toe with them. And I think it still is one of my favorite guitar solos from him. And the main riff being so complex, he doesn't really, if he didn't have the ability to play at that level, it would have shown on this song, because it's really hard to play. And there's no easy section where he can just kind of, sit back and take a back seat to the other two guys.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it
Yeah, I'd have to
definitely.
agree with that.
I think it definitely is. So this is the first song that we hear with the lineup that's come to be, and to this day, right? Alex, Geddy, and Neil, and I think it's really the perfect opener for them as a group together, and for this album. I mean, I think it's a really hard hitting opener, even to the point that I believe this was part of the R30 overture at the beginning of R30. They put that riff into that. So, and to me, it's definitely the standout song on the album too. It's probably the most beloved song, other than maybe By Tor and the Snow Dog, but it's definitely up there in terms of popularity. It's really good. It's a really great song, really great musically. What do you guys think?
I think there's something to be said about opening tracks on an album, regardless of what album it is. And I'm sure every band does this. I know that this probably happens, but I think with Rush, there's a certain energy that's encapsulated on the opening track of whatever album it may be. But in this case, Fly By Night, it's Anthem of the great epic 2112. And even later albums like Show Don't Tell from Costa. There's just a certain energy that, is encapsulated in these songs. And what a great way to start off with Neil, And it just shows the kind of, the virtuosity and just the chemistry and real connection that they have with each other, and how they're able to voice that both musically, lyrically, and I guess in some ways intellectually to others is quite an experience for both musician and listener.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what kept them sort of signed to a large extent, because while Caressa Steel kind of takes this to the extreme, they were kind of like, all right, look, like these guys might write really weird stuff. They might try and, throw philosophy in there, but they can play. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, no record company wanted to lose them, because they're absolute monsters on their instruments. So that's, and if you can really play, then people will listen to you, whether or not, people listen to it for the lyrics or not. So yeah, while they did kind of like test that a lot in the next, and even, Hemispheres tests that boundary. Again, it's just, it's one of those things, like how much craziness can we put in there while still keeping people tied in with amazing musicianship. And I think Anthem is just such a great example of the actual music and the lyrics and the subject matter and the environment they were trying to achieve. It all just comes together so well. You couldn't have written a song basically glorifying selfishness without having a completely self-indulgent, crazy riff to back it up. I don't think it would have worked.
I really like how the song starts with the three of them, and it kind of says, to me that sort of says, hey, this is Rush. It's the three of them starting out, and I've always felt that Rush as a band has never really there's not one person that's like always featured. In some bands there's somebody who's like this is like the star of this band and everybody else is just kind of there, even though everybody else is still great musicians. I never felt that way about Rush. I always felt that they were, kind of equal. Even though Neil would still, even later in his life, joke that he was the new guy. So I really like how they start together, and they're tight. I mean, this track, they're playing very, very tight on it, and the unison riffs they're doing, and the extra licks and accents that Neil's throwing underneath it, and building it and getting a little bit more busy on it as the song goes on, is just, I think it just speaks volumes for their musicianship and their songwriting. Even though this was early in their songwriting career, they're really starting to see, hey, what can we do, and starting to experiment.
Yeah, and to add on to that, just thinking about Geddy's vocal on it, which is very like high-pitched head voices, like we all know and love in those early Rush years, that just suits this musical style so well. It's very well done, and in combination with Neil's words, just how like almost snarky Geddy comes off with in his inflections, just so like a matter of fact about how he feels about the things that Neil wrote about. It's just really, it just all comes together so well in the end.
And I have to agree with all of you. Everything that you said is, I think, just spot on, with, what I feel the music, and it's still, Ryan, what you said, as part of the R30 overture, and they just played the instrumental portion of it. And, I get goosebumps every single time I hear it. Alex's guitar playing, it just, what can you do? I mean, it's goosebumps all around. The music sonically is just, it's three parts of the whole coming together. Each of them are so great on their own, playing their each individual instruments. But when you put them together, it's like, it's indescribable.
Yeah. Right. It's kind of like the whole, the whole, or what is the phrase? The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In terms of lyrics, so know your place in life is where you want to be. Don't let them tell you that you owe it all to me. What do you guys think that states? What do you think that's trying to say?
I think it's kind of, you can extrapolate that as the three of them kind of, to sort of bring in the last point about the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. It's the three of them kind of saying, look, this is us. This is our musical identity. This is the way we're going to go about this in our career. And they did. They never listened to critics. They did almost selfishly whatever they wanted, whatever they thought was the best thing for Rush. They never took into account, we might not, sell as many records if we make, a 20-minute song about this futuristic dystopian world. It's like, no, we want to do that because it's awesome and we think it's awesome. And if people like it, great. If not, we tried, and so it's kind of that whole idea of, going all in and, not, hesitating and just, going for what you want. And I think that it's a theme that they, established obviously pretty early on as a trio, and they never strayed from it.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with Geddy back in, I think it was 79 or 80. I think it was the Permanent Waves tour. And this interviewer asked Geddy just basically how would you determine your success, and based on what kind of music you would play, how would you change stuff the way you did in the past, or would you continue with it or whatever along those lines? And Geddy said, you know what, if we get a hit single and we are successful that way, that's great. And if we don't, that's great too. You just got to make sure that you're focused on what you're doing, and at the end of the day, you got to make what makes you, tick as a musician. So,
yeah,
right. Keep on looking forward. No use in looking around. Hold your head above the crowd, and they won't bring you down.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Another lyric here is the big one in this song. Live for yourself. There's no one else more worth living for. Begging hands and bleeding hearts will only cry out for more. So that's the Jim. I know you're going to say something.
Well, no, go ahead.
No, I mean, to this, it kind of encapsulates kind of what Tristan was just saying too. It's really, it's selfishness in a way, but like I've always kind of attributed it to, you need to be happy yourself first before you can make other people happy. Just as like kind of a general motto or words to live by, I guess, so to speak. I don't think it's really them being selfish. I think it's them taking it in their own direction and staying true to themselves, staying true to their happiness with playing their style of music without worrying about critics. I think is kind of the message that I get from this song.
Yeah.
An
Yeah,
anthem for
I
Rush.
agree. Yeah, and you everybody has to be at least a little bit selfish, and it took me years to figure out that, you got to look out for yourself. It literally took me years to figure that out. But so you do have to be a little bit selfish because you do have to look out for yourself. And, they were most likely, looking out for themselves as a band, which over the course of their career, I'm very, very glad that they did, because they were able to create what they wanted. And to me, Anthem is that's the, that's the first step of it, is what Anthem is and what they want to creating through their entire career. At least that's the first step that the listener is exposed to, being the first track on the album.
One last thing I want to say before we, as my timer over here says 2112. I just want to say that I feel like this song was the start of, well, granted, it's the start of Rush lineup as we know it, but I really feel like this song overall is what kind of started the cult following, so to speak, of Rush, like, because we're all like Rush family, we like to say, right? But this song started as I previously mentioned, Rush's mindset of, we're going to write songs the way we want to write them and not adhere to what the record company wants, so to speak. So I feel like this was the start of that, and that also kind of pushed forward with the fan base too. I think that kind of resonated with a lot of the fan base and really brought about the following that Rush fans are today. What do you guys think of that?
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. With that, Jim, go ahead and go with Best I Can.
Best I can.
Do the best you can with reading this.
Obviously, what I am. All right. Keith Moon's influence on Peart can immediately be heard in the beginning of this track. A busy, playful fill begins the song before leading into a repetitive chord progression interspersed with chromatic runs by the bass and guitar, as well as numerous unusual drum fills. Listeners at this point will begin to realize that Peart's drum fills often start at unusual moments and rarely finish when expected. This is one of the reasons that a relatively simple rock song such as this is, in its final form, is an impressive technical musical work. This song was written before Peart's introduction in the band, and footage does exist of Rush performing Best I Can with John Rudson. It is amazing the difference that Peart's incendiary drumming makes to that song, or makes to a song that otherwise would not have sounded at all out of place on the first album. One improvement here that Peart cannot take credit for is in the song's lyric. Lee's simple expression of the band's ambition is not overly sophisticated. Rock and roll's a screamin', making millions my dream. Well, I do that a lot. But this is surely part of the song's charm, and it is interesting to note that this is yet another song about ambition. Lee's vocal delivery seems to have even more gravel here, and at times it does sound forced. While the enthusiastic delivery is enjoyable, his diction is poor, often making the lyric sheet a requirement whilst listening. The use of a wah-wah pedal here is interesting, providing at times a huge treble boost, somewhat comparable to Brian May's tone. His style, however, is entirely different, though no less confident. Lifeson here shows a command of his instrument and a real feel for melody in the short solo. After another verse and some thundering displays of Peart's double bass drumming, this lively song comes to an end. a song that bridges the gap between the straight-ahead rock of the debut album and the more technical direction of the second. And in case of people are wondering, Brian May is a guitar player for Queen. That's what they were referring to.
So, two real short quotes. The band had been playing Best I Can in pre-Neil days, but waited until Fly By Night to press it into vinyl. That's from Rob Friedman from Rush Vault. And then a quote from Martin Popoff from Contents Under Pressure book. Even Goldie Oldie Best I Can gets an unexpected bounce from that new drummer there. So let's discuss lyrics and music at the same time here for this one. Personally, I think that this song sounds a lot like the debut album, but on steroids. And what I mean by that is it's, with Neil involved in this song, even though Geddy wrote the lyrics, and this is originally, one that was, as I just mentioned, pre-Neil days, but it was finally put on Fly By Night. But I think that's a lot of the reason why you see this, or a lot of the reason why I think this song is very similar to the debut album. It kind of sounds like the lyrics were, they're kind of generic. They're not really too literary like a Neil type lyric. It's just a common rock song, but it's just a pretty kick-ass rock song because Neil is on it. Is kind of my opinion.
I mean, I kind of approach it the same way when I was listening to the record before, preparing to do these album discussions, listen to the whole record. And when I got to Best I Can, I was kind of like, you know what? Like, I kind of have the same appreciation for this as I do like a live version of Working Man, or, you know what I mean? Like the live versions of the Star, the live versions of What You're Doing or Finding My Way, whatever the song, pick a song from the debut album that they played with Neil live.
Yeah.
He elevates it. It's certainly not on the same level as the stuff that they all wrote together and created together, because it's impossible, because you're kind of having somebody come in and interpret something that's already been done. You know what I mean? There's only so much the boundaries are set, and the boundaries were set on this too, because like I said, they had written the song already. But I mean, man, Neil does a whole hell of a lot for not a lot of wiggle room. He doesn't waste a second. He doesn't waste a single beat. And I know Jim mentioned this. He's not always on the one. He's not always, keeping in perfect time when he's doing these things, but it doesn't sound weird to the listener, which I think is the key, because if you're going in and doing all these funky things and the listener has no idea that you're not supposed to technically be doing that, then you're doing a damn good job. And I mean, there's not much else that you can say about Neil. I don't have to glorify his playing any more than, I mean, we all know how great he was. But I mean, I think it's definitely one of the weaker songs on the album, simply because you miss Neil's songwriting. But I wouldn't skip it. It's still pretty good.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Oh yeah. I mean, I really like that this song rocks. And, even, Rush they'll come to be known for their, technical, well, they're already displaying the technical ability on the album, but for more, technical facility on their instruments, and for the, for kind of the, I don't know how to describe it, I guess the technical way to write, that they write songs, and just that the songs have a lot of complex, rhythms and figures and phrases, that they have. But this song kind of shows that even with that lineup of the Holy Triumvirate, as what his name said from the How I Met Your Mother thing, they still rock, and Neil definitely, he threw in his own flair in this song. I mean, from that opening riff, that influence is obvious who that is, but anyway, I think it's a fun song. It's a blast, and I love, what Neil did to it, what he added to it. I think it's great.
Yeah,
Guests?
I have to agree with that. I'm sorry, Ryan. Love you.
No,
Man.
that's all right. Go ahead.
No, I just appreciate the fact that Neil came in, and as the new guy, we all know that won't last. But he interprets this song and he appreciates like the legacy that is already being formed by Rush after just one album, and he lets the song still stay kind of like bluesy, a bit more like a bluesy kind of rock song. And it's just it just goes to show the character of Neil and the band, of just how like non-egotistical that they were, that they would let each other do what they wanted to do, and they would just go forward with that. Sorry, Ryan, now you can go.
No, I was
Yeah.
saying
Ryan,
you
Tristan?
guess, like, if you guys have
Yes.
anything you want to add, Ryan or Tristan.
No, I totally agree with Carson. The way that they allowed each other to write what they wanted to write and do what they wanted to do was perfectly executed on best I can. And later stuff that they would do on in the '80s, Taishan. But it's just a matter of facility, really. You get to do what you feel a song requires, and just the way things play out it was very democratic. There was no ego attached to any of the ideas, which really allows for a smooth writing process, recording process, whatever it may be, and they nailed it.
And again, I agree with everything that everybody said. I think this is, one of their songs that, kind of harkens back to the first album, with more, the first album was, more simplicity. Whereas Fly By Night gets into the more technical with By Tour, with, even Fly By Night, the title track. But I also think that the lyrics here really, kind of speak for themselves. They're kind of real, just nitty gritty. They're just doing the best that they can, and they shouldn't have to explain why they do what they do. What they do should just speak for itself, which should be the case for anybody. Your results should show, I mean, it should show more than what, anything you could explain might be.
Right.
That's just my opinion on the lyrics.
Yeah.
So
No, that's a good point.
got a living that's rough, a future that's tough. You know what I mean? Blankers and boasters, all the bluffers and posers. I'm not into that scene. That's not as much of a tongue twister as Beneath, Between, and Behind, but that's quite the tongue twister.
It is.
Yeah, we'll get to that in the next episode. What's a blanker? What is it? What is a blanker in the sense of this? I mean, I looked it up earlier, and the first thing I got was Urban Dictionary, and it was a derogatory term for a white person. But I don't think that's what was intended. Yeah,
It could be just like,
I had never heard that
somebody-
before. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
It could be somebody just like has like a blank expression on their face, maybe, because thinking of like
That's
a
what I was
boaster is
thinking.
somebody who'd be like thinking they're so great, but then the blanker is somebody you just could never please. I don't know. That would just be my guess. Probably Canadian slang.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of took it as it's kind of it's very possible Canadian slang too. But I kind of took it as like there's no substance there, right? It's just kind of a person that's boring, so to speak, to the opposite of a boaster, which is someone that brags about accomplishments or achievements, or egotistical in a way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then a bluffer is
Yeah.
that's like a poker
Obvious.
term, bluffing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And posers, that's pretty obvious too. But what do you guys think of that set of lyrics? What do you think is trying to be said there?
Just some pretty cringy forced rhyming, I think, that Neil wouldn't get into.
Aw.
No offense to Ged, but
I
I mean,
agree.
he's basically talking about, when you're in a band and you're even semi-popular as they were, they had not reached, the stratosphere of superstardom that they would. People are weird around you. People are going to be looking to take advantage of you. People are going to be looking to get what they can out of you. And, once you start becoming successful in that, especially in a field like music, it could be jealousy, it could be, whatever. People act differently around you. So the only thing you can do is kind of put your head down and go forward, which I think is what he's probably trying to say there.
Yeah. That's a good thought there.
I agree with that 100%. Totally.
Tristan, you're going to say
Well,
something?
I was just going to say, I think it also speaks a lot about not only Getty, but the whole band's humility. I think it shows that, once again, there's no ego attached to what they do. And the whole idea of, the lyric, I'm not into that scene of the bluffers and the boasters and all that. There's no, they don't want to have any relationship with, people that are going to be egotistical and try and make, they don't want to be the kind that kind of steps on everybody else's hands to get further up the ladder, if you know what I mean. But it's very raw, and it's a rock and roll spirit that's, it's,
That mentality stood the test of time too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
they weren't big shots in Fly By Night, and this time period. So, all right. Well, as we usually do at the end of the song discussions, we pick which song of the ones discussed that we like more. Are we all in agreement that we like Anthem more?
Yep.
Does anyone want to speak out?
Yeah.
Okay. Best I Can, good song. Just Anthem is amazing.
Cool tune.
And now for the first time in 35 episodes, I forgot to ask us what song we are currently hooked on at this time at the beginning of the episode. So we're now at the end of the
Changing it up.
episode. So Matt, go first.
Gotta be honest, I've been hooked on, doing the research for Fly By Night. Been hooked on the live version of By Tour lately, specifically from the Vapor Trails tour. Sick.
Okay. For me, it's Ceiling Unlimited from Vapor Trails.
Great song.
Yep, been hooked on that for the past week or so. I've been getting into trying to really spot the differences between each version on the original Vapor Trails and the remixed. So playing them one after the other and listening to, the differences. And finally getting, I know some people did that early on, but finally trying to get into that. Jim?
I'm going to go with Making Memories. I was listening to Fly By Night. I started thinking about that song, and it's kind of folksy and kind of rocky at the same time. And it's just, to me, it's really catchy. It's something catchy. You could just kind of, keep, at least I have it playing. I have a continuous radio in my head that never stops. And right now, that one is on a continuous loop in my head. It's just this is a fun tune. I've always enjoyed that song.
Carson?
I gotta go with Everyday Glory from Counterpart.
That's a fantastic song.
Live, I think, for a lot of us, been really stressful on a personal level and on a global level with everything going on. And just Everyday Glory speaks to that really well, I think.
Totally.
We're the ones who have to fly. Brian?
For me here lately, for the last week and a half, it's been Time in Motion off of Test for Echo.
Cool.
Love that track. It's, they kind of incorporated a little more, keyboards back into it. It's a little more of the electronic, even though they had gotten away from that, on Counterparts. But it just, I don't know, the lyrics really, they're really hitting home about, how everything is really cyclical and time is just, it's really an illusion that everything's happening all at once.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't take it for granted. That's what I take from that song.
Awesome.
Tristan?
I got to give it to Circumstances right now. Just been listening to Hemispheres, and I just love the idea that the transition between how the chorus and the verse are more like hard rock, and then the instrumental part is very orchestral and synthy. It's a nice balance, and my band is kind of picking up on it too, and they're a really big influence for us, and we enjoy them, and that's a great song for us. So.
Absolutely. So guys, thank you to the three of you for joining us. This is the
Thank you
first
for having
episode.
me.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you.
This is the first episode that will be posted directly to YouTube. So I'm going to cringily say, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Yeah. Yeah, subscribe to the notifications and hit the like button or whatever I'm supposed to say here. Yeah, so going forward, you'll see both YouTube and Instagram for these. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, and you want to come on, fans watching this, just shoot us a direct message on Instagram, and we'll be more than happy to include you. So, thanks, guys, and everyone, take care.
Thank you, everyone.